Never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty. He said it to boys in school blazers while bombers droned somewhere beyond the clouds. He said it with a bulldog jaw and a tired heart. He said it because the night was real and the day was not guaranteed, and he meant every word. Tonight, we walk into Winston Churchill's letters, his speeches, and the private notes that carried him through the storm. And we pull out a habit that changes how you face your own storm. Not yesterday, not someday, today. First, a room, dim. The papers smell of smoke and ink. A map pinned with needles, seas splashed in the pale blue of a threat. It's May 1940. Europe is burning. Britain's new Prime Minister steps into Parliament and offers the nation a gift that, at first, sounds like a curse. He says, with no tremor, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." That moment matters because it is a masterclass in leadership under pressure. He doesn't sugarcoat. He doesn't barter. He defines the price and the purpose in a single breath. And people follow. Why? Because when reality knocks, a leader who names the bill earns trust. And a leader who names the destination makes the march bearable. Think about your life right now. The project, the family storm, the private battle you've told almost no one about. You don't beat it by pretending it's small. You don't win by faking positivity. You win by doing what Churchill did. Name the cost, name the aim, and move. In May of 1940, the cost was steep. An island standing alone against a machine built for conquest. But notice the second part of his method. Action married to aim. He didn't just say, "Here's the pain." He said, "Here's why we endure it." Survival was the minimum. Victory, the mandate. Now imagine the doubt. Imagine the late-night corridor where a light is still on, and a man in a bow tie leans over a desk, whispering the weight of a nation to himself. He did not glow with certainty. He wrestled with it. That's the secret we often miss. Courage is not a permanent mood. It's a decision renewed like a fire that needs tending. And the tending happens in words. Words spoken out loud, words said in letters, words hammered into memos that pull the day forward. But let's rewind. Because if you only see Churchill at the podium, you miss the deeper lesson, the one that belongs in your morning, your commute, your kitchen sink at 11 p.m. Before the roar, there was failure, real, public, scalding failure. In 1915, Gallipoli, a plan, pushed hard, that ended in disaster, lives lost, reputation shattered. Churchill stepped down and faced a silence louder than applause could ever be. What do you do when the world says, "You did this," and part of you fears it's right? He wrote letters, to those he loved, to those he needed to persuade. And he wrote to himself in a different language, paint. Brush meeting canvas. He had a room warmed by light and color when the rest of his life felt cold. He called it a kind of rescue in later reflections, a way to quiet the storm long enough to hear the next right step. The lesson isn't about oil paints. It's about rebuilding your inner workshop after a collapse. Maybe you've felt it, the career misfire. The break you thought would save you, that cracked instead. The urge to hide. Churchill did what the resilient do. He made a small, faithful practice to nurse strength. For him, it was painting and reading and writing. For you, it might be a morning walk, 10 lines in a journal, or a simple act you can keep sacred, not to escape reality, but to re-enter it with steadier hands. Notice the pattern: honesty about the cost, a worthy aim, and a private habit that keeps courage fueled. But there's one more piece, something colder, harder, and oddly beautiful. It's 1941, the war now brushing every window. In Whitehall, a small red stamp appears on memoranda. Action this day. 2 words plus a command. They weren't dramatic. They were practical. They turned urgency into focus. Not action this week. Not action when you have energy. Action this day. One day. Today. Specific tasks, specific owners, specific deadlines. Speed with discipline. Imagine applying that to your life. Not as a slogan, but as a structure. You wake up and ask, what is the one action that moves the mission? A phone call you dread. A page you must write. a conversation you can't delay. It's not about doing everything. It's about identifying the decisive move and stamping it. Action this day. When you string enough of those days together, you build a campaign, and campaigns win what battles alone cannot. But let's press deeper. Why did people listen when Churchill named the cost? Why did a nation keep stride after weeks of sirens? Because leadership, in his hands, was a form of storytelling with teeth. He tied daily hardship to a story larger than any one person could carry. Listen to the cadence of his thanks to the Royal Air Force. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. That line isn't just about fighter pilots. It's about perspective. Gratitude is ballast. It reminds the tired shopkeeper, the exhausted nurse, the boy on fire watch. Your small act is part of a pattern. Your sacrifice is a thread in a banner you'll never fully see, but you can already feel it rising. What he meant then still matters now. You're not a lone figure trying to white-knuckle your way through a storm. You are part of a grid of people whose courage multiplies when it aligns. Find the few in your life, the friends, the colleagues, the mentor, who fight your sky while you guard their ground. Thank them. Name them. It doesn't make the night shorter, but it makes you stronger inside it. And yet those words, those great public words, would ring hollow without the quiet counterpart. The letters, the late notes scratched on margins. In those he argued with himself. He tested plans, admitted doubts, listened to corrections, and changed course when evidence demanded it. That's leadership without the costume. That's the kind of courage you can practice before breakfast. So how do we turn all of this into a habit that changes your life today? Start with the mirror. Speak to yourself with the same sober clarity he gave the House of Commons. Name what your day will cost. Not to scare yourself, to prepare yourself. Then choose the aim. What is worth that cost? One aim, not 5. And finally, one action that moves that aim. Stamp it figuratively or literally. Action this day. But imagine if you did this for a week. 7 days of clear cost, clear aim, one decisive move. What does your week look like then? What about a month? The magic isn't in a burst of heroism. It's in steady resolve married to candid realism. He also understood something brutal. Morale without means is a lullaby. So he built means. He forged alliances, cajoled industry, demanded efficiency. Translated to your life, that means, don't just psych yourself up. Build systems. Put your tools where you'll trip over them. Make the first step so small you'll do it even when you're tired. If he could make a nation war-ready, you can make your kitchen table ready for the 1 hour that matters. There's a moment I want you to picture. The city is dark, the moon veiled, the ground shaking lightly with distant impacts. Somewhere, on Downing Street, a pen scratches. Words forming orders, orders forming momentum, momentum forming hope. That bridge, from ink to action, is where ordinary days become extraordinary outcomes. And no, you won't feel like it every day. He didn't either. He wrestled with illness, with missteps, with the weight of command. The point is not to enjoy the grind. The point is to align the grind with a purpose you can say out loud without flinching. Here's the truth the letters teach. Private honesty makes public courage credible. He wrote apologies. He wrote revisions. He wrote thanks. Try this. At the end of today, write 3 short notes. 1 to someone you rely on, naming your gratitude. 1 to yourself, naming a mistake and the lesson you're taking. And 1 that reads, simply, action this day, with tomorrow's non-negotiable move beneath it. But what about fear? Fear thrives in silence and vagueness. He robbed it of oxygen by speaking plainly and acting promptly. If your fear is a conversation, book it. If your fear is a number in your bank account, face it. If your fear is failure, remember Gallipoli, and how a ruined chapter didn't end the book. The page turned because a hand turned it. Quick pause. What's the one Churchill line that hits you hardest right now, and what's the single action you'll stamp action this day? Tell me in the comments. And if this is strengthening your resolve, make sure you're subscribed so we keep walking through storms together. Now back to that school hall in 1941. The walls still smell of chalk and dust. The boys shift on hard benches. The world is unpredictable, a dice roll thrown by cruel hands. He stands and tells them, never give in. Not because victory was certain, but because surrender guarantees defeat. That's the hinge, not optimism, not pessimism. Resolve. Resolve is sturdier than mood. Resolve is a choice even when you're tired, embarrassed, or afraid. And resolve needs a shape. Churchill gave it a shape in 3 moves you can copy. First, define reality without anesthesia. It wins trust, and it calibrates expectations. When you say to yourself, this will be hard, you lower the shock and raise the focus. You stop burning energy on surprise. Second, bind that reality to a worthy aim. Why is not a poster on a wall. It's a line you can say when your back aches. Churchill didn't ask people to suffer in general. He asked them to endure for victory and freedom. Make your aim that clear. Third, move 1 decisive inch today. Not 10. 1. And move the right inch, the one that changes tomorrow's options. That is, action this day. There's another thread we can't ignore, the dignity he extended to ordinary effort. When he praised the few, he lifted a nation's eyes to see meaning in routine. You can do that for your team, your family, your friends. Write the message that says, I see what you carried. That's leadership too. And when you fail, and you will, step back into the small practice that keeps your courage lit. Maybe painting isn't your thing. Fine. Walk. Read a page. Sit in a quiet room and breathe for 4 minutes until your shoulders drop. Those are not luxuries. They are maintenance for the engine that will carry you through. One more image. London at dawn after a raid. Windows shattered, streets swept, shops opening anyway. The city, wounded, goes to work. That's the spirit he tried to cultivate. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose stronger than pain. He once framed it in gratitude and grit, 2 hands clasped together. Thank the few, strengthen the many, and keep your day pointed at the aim. If he could sit with you now, in the dim kitchen light, late and quiet, I suspect he'd be blunt, but kind. He'd say, you are not finished. The setback that humiliates you today will be a paragraph, not the final line. Name the cost, choose the aim, write the order, action this day. And if the night feels long, borrow the line he gave those boys. Borrow it like a lantern. Never give in. Never, 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 never. Not to despair, not to distraction, not to the lie that says you are alone. You are part of a story larger than this hour, and your next step is the proof. So take it, stamp it, and tomorrow we do it again.